Welcome and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Polina Sadovskaya. I'm a Eurasia Program Director at PEN America. For those who don't know this organization, well, I'm glad we introduce you to PEN through our Belarus Solidarity event. It's very important that more people know about what's going on in Belarus right now. But also, first and foremost, PEN America is a literary organization that champions freedom of expression all over the world. And of course, at home in the US, where this fundamental freedom is also at risk right now. But back to Belarus. After fabricated results of the presidential elections in Belarus on August 9th, when Alexander Lukashenko again wrongly claimed himself a winner, people of Belarus could not stand this farce anymore. For more than 2 months, every day, they go on the streets to request fair elections and release of all political prisoners, whose number is also growing every day. Peaceful protesters all over Belarus face brutal persecution by police and government, which do not want to give up their seats. More than 7,000 people were detained since the elections, including our colleagues from PEN Belarus, and more than 500 people were tortured. President of PEN Belarus, Nobel Prize winner and a member of core group of opposition coordinating council, Svetlana Alexievich, is the only one from this group who is not detained yet, but is under constant threat of detainment. PEN America has a strong partnership with our sister PEN Center, PEN Belarus. In the situation when there is no official entity to protect cultural rights in the country, PEN Belarus is the one who monitors and documents violations of cultural rights, of which since August 9th, there are already more than 50. We stand with PEN Belarus and all brave Belarusian people in their fight for truth and dignity. For our today's event in the series of PEN Presents, we are honored to have the support of two incredible partners, the Open Society University Network and the City of Asylum Bookstore. Check the chat for more information on these two organizations. And don't forget to check the City of Asylum Bookstore link to purchase books by the authors who are reading tonight. So tonight we'll hear Masha Gessen, Jennifer Egan, Ayad Akhtar, Kit Gessen, and Bela Shayevich reading works of Svetlana Alexievich. We'll also hear writers from Belarus, Valzhina Mort, Tatsiana Zamirovskaya, and Hanna Komar reading their own works. You can find the full bios of our panelists on pen.org. Feel free to use Zoom chat function to tell us where you are tuning in from and also interact with each other. And please note that this event is being recorded. So let's begin. And we'll start with Masha Gessen, who is a vice president of PEN America, a staff writer at the New Yorker, and the author of 11 books, including Survival Autocracy and The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia, which won the National Book Award in 2017. So now I turn it over to you, Masha.
Thank you. I'm going to read a very short excerpt from Svetlana Alexievich's Secondhand Time, translated by Bela Shayevich, who's also taking part in this event. And this is a piece, this is a book written about, or finished about 8 years ago. And I think this passage refers to a period 8 years ago. I asked everyone I met what freedom meant. Fathers and children had very different answers. Those who were born in the USSR and those born after its collapse do not share a common experience. It's like they're from different planets. For the fathers, freedom is the absence of fear. The 3 days in August when we defeated the putsch. A man with his choice of 100 kinds of salami is freer than one who has only 10 to choose from. Freedom is never being flogged, although no generation of Russians has yet avoided flogging. Russians don't understand freedom. They need the Cossack and the whip. For the children, freedom is love. Inner freedom is an absolute value. Freedom is when you're not afraid of your own desires, having lots of money so that you'll have everything. It's when you can live without having to think about freedom. Freedom is normal. From a conversation with a university professor. At the end of the 90s, my students would laugh when I told them stories about the Soviet Union. They were positive that a new future awaited them. Now it's a different story. Today, students have truly seen and felt capitalism, the inequality, the poverty, the shameless wealth. They've witnessed their lives of their parents, who never got anything out of the plundering of our country. And they're oriented toward radicalism. They dream of their own revolution. They wear red t-shirts with pictures of Lenin and Che Guevara. There's a new demand for everything Soviet, for the cult of Stalin. Half of the people between the ages of 19 and 30 consider Stalin an unrivaled political figure. A new cult of Stalin in a country where he murdered at least as many people as Hitler. Everything Soviet is back in style. Soviet-style cafes with Soviet names and Soviet dishes, Soviet candy and Soviet salami. Their taste and smell all too familiar from childhood. And of course, Soviet vodka. There are dozens of Soviet-themed TV shows, scores of websites devoted to Soviet nostalgia. You can visit Stalin's camps on Solovki, in Magadan, as a tourist. The adverts promise that for the full effect, they'll give you a camp uniform and a pickaxe. They'll show you the newly restored barracks. Afterwards, there will be fishing. Old-fashioned ideas are back in style: the great empire, the iron hand, the special Russian path. They brought back the Soviet national anthem. There's a new Komsomol, only now it's called Nashi. There's a ruling party, and it runs the country by the Communist Party playbook. The Russian president is just as powerful as the general secretary used to be, which is to say he has absolute power. Instead of Marxism-Leninism, there's Russian Orthodoxy. On the eve of the 1917 revolution, Alexander Green wrote, "And the future seems to have stopped standing in its proper place." Now, 100 years later, the future is, once again, not where it ought to be. Our time comes to us secondhand. The barricades are a dangerous place for an artist. They're a trap. They ruin your vision, narrow your pupils, drain the world of its true colors. On the barricades, everything is black and white. You can't see individuals. All you see are black dots, targets. I've spent my entire life on the barricades, and I would like to leave them behind. I want to learn how to enjoy life, to get back to my normal vision. But today, tens of thousands of people are once again taking to the streets. They're taking each other by the hand and tying white ribbons onto their jackets, a symbol of rebirth and light. And I'm with them. And with this, I'll turn it over to Valjina Mort.
Masha, thank you, PEN America. I dedicate my reading to everybody who was in detention, is currently in detention, and who would unfortunately be detained over the course of the next weekends in Belarus. This is to say, I dedicate my reading to all Belarusian people. Two of my friends are currently political prisoners. Max Znak is a lawyer in a country that recognizes no law. Olga Shparaga is a scholar researching power and violence in a country where police functions as state-sanctioned project in terror. Max, Olga, I'm proud of you and I'm deeply worried about your well-being every day. Today's tortures didn't start this summer. In Belarus, were all the great-grandchildren and the grandchildren of terror. My poem speaks to the Belarusian sites of mass executions that are recognized as objects of cultural heritage. Antigone, dead siblings are set. As for the living, pick me for a sister. I too love a proper funeral. Drag digging sisters, pop-up burial. Landlady, I make the rounds of graves, keeping up my family's top-notch properties. On a torture instrument called an accordion, I stretch my fingers into those of a witch. My guts have been emptied like bellows for the best sound. Once we settle your brother, I'll show you forests of the unburied dead. We'll clean the way only two sisters can clean the house. No bones scattered like dirty socks, no ashes at the bottom of kneecaps. Why bicker with husbands about dishes when we've got mountains of skulls to shine? Labor and retribution will share, not girly secrets. Brought up by dolls and monuments, I have the bearings of a horse and a bitch. I am waterproof. I am cement in tears. You can spot my graves from afar, marble like newborn skin. Here, history comes to an end like a movie with rolling credits of headstones, like a movie with nameless credits of mass graves. Every ditch, every hill is suspect. Pick me for a sister, Antigone. In this suspicious land, I have a bright shovel of a face. Put your bones into braids of graves, woods. Put your bones into braids of graves, ravines. Put your bones into braids of graves, fields. Put your bones into braids of graves, swamps. Put your graves into braids of bones, mother. Put your graves into braids of bones, moth. Put your graves into braids of bones, ghost. Put your graves into braids of bones, guest. Braid your bones neatly. Braid your bones bravely. Finger comb your bones into neat braids in our woods, ravines, fields, swamps. And reading next is my friend Tatsiana Zamirovskaya. She's a writer and journalist from Minsk who currently resides in Brooklyn.
Thank you, Valgina, and thank you, everybody. I want to dedicate my reading to Belarusian journalists. I've been working for Belarusian independent media for 15 years, and now my friends and colleagues with their press licenses revoked by government are risking their lives on streets in a war zone. They're being shot, imprisoned, beaten, tortured. Their homes are searched, their laptops and cameras are taken away, and still they do their job because it's their job to document, to create the narrative, to preserve the memory, to fight indifference. I would like to read a short piece from the experimental novella I'm writing in my imperfect English to see how language deprivation affects memory. It's about a Belarusian immigrant in the US who rejects his identity. This excerpt is about Belarusian language, untranslatability, and indifference. All of this and indifference. One of the subway stations is called after the B place historical figure, Kostyushko. In A place, they pronounce his name in a funny way. People in Brooklyn say Kostyushko. Sometimes they also say Kostyushko. In Russian, it sounds like Kostyushka. In B place language, it's Kostyushka. Too many sh and shs. That's almost all he knows about B place language. People in B place don't speak it that much. For him, it always sounded like a funny, distorted version of Russian. That's why the political news in his homeland, newspapers, looked funny to him. Once his roommates, some of them from B place, some from Russia, played the game, guess the word. Russians were asked to guess the meaning of B place words just by sound. It was to prove that two languages are different. Shuflyada, a whore, a moth, a moldy chocolate bar, Ron, a drawer. But did they actually say drawer? For there is no word meaning drawer in Russian. They use the word shelf for a drawer and a shelf, or a box for a drawer and a box, polka, ящик. Imbrek, a small animal like a rat, a frog, an eclair with cream cheese, Ron, a tea kettle, чайник. Kufar, Someone who cooks a giant-flying cockroach, a rare genetic syndrome, Ron, a chest box, Sunduk. Porcelana, a whore, just a woman's name, a scratch. Ron, it's porcelain, farfur. Mlявость, bad weather, a spit. Nausea, sleeping in the mud and falling down, the pimple. Ron, it's that specific state of mind we, B-place humans, experience regularly. We have a saying describing this kind of interaction with the world, and it's totally untranslatable to Russian, pronounced like агульная млявость и обыяковость добытся. It could be translated as total sluggishness and indifference to being, or general laziness and indifference to being, or universal apathy and indifference to being, or extensive listlessness and indifference to being, or prevailing drowsiness and indifference to being, or absolute lethargy and indifference to being, or unlimited languor and indifference to being, or overall fatigue and indifference to being, exhaustion, tiredness, weakness, and indifference. And when they Googled that phrase, figuring out in English it's actually a quote from Heidegger, no one thought it was funny. Thank you. And it's the great honor for me to present the next reader, the wonderful and brilliant novelist and journalist, president of PEN America, Jennifer Egan.
Thank you. It's an honor to be part of this evening. I'm going to read from Svetlana Alexievich's first book, The Unwomanly Face of War, which is her iconic oral history of Russian women during World War II. This is a book I've wanted to read for a long time, and now that I finally started it, I feel as if it is the book I've been waiting my entire life to read. It is so spectacular. And I'm actually going to read from the first chapter, which is in Svetlana's own voice, excerpts from the journals she kept during the years she spent interviewing her subjects. And given that she and so many others are under siege in Belarus, I thought it would be meaningful to hear her own lucid words describing her oral history project. A human being is greater than war. Memory preserves precisely the moments of that greatness. A human being is guided by something stronger than history. I have to gain breadth to write the truth about life and death in general, not only the truth about war. To ask Dostoevsky's question, how much human being is in a human being? And how to protect this human being in oneself. Evil is unquestionably tempting. Evil is more artful than good, more attractive. As I delve more deeply into the boundless world of war, everything else becomes slightly faded, more ordinary than the ordinary. A grandiose and predatory world. Now I understand the solitude of the human being who comes back from there. As if from another planet or from the other world. This human being has a knowledge that others do not have, that can be obtained only there, close to death. When she tries to put something into words, she has a sense of catastrophe. She is struck dumb. She wants to tell. The others would like to understand, but they are all powerless. My goal, first of all, is to get at the truth of those years, of those days, without sham feelings. Just after the war, this woman could have told of one war. After decades, of course, it changes somewhat because she adds her whole life to this memory, her whole self, how she lived those years, what she read, saw, whom she met, finally, whether she is happy or unhappy. What are we looking for? Most often not great deeds and heroism, but small human things, the most interesting and intimate for us. It is impossible to go right up to reality. Between us and reality are our feelings. I understand that I am dealing with versions, that each person has her version, and it is from them, from their plurality and their intersections, that the image of the time and the people living in it is born. But I would not like it to be said of my book, her heroes are real and no more than that. This is just history, mere history. I write not about war, but about human beings in war. I write not the history of a war, but the history of feelings. I am a historian of the soul. On the one hand, I examine specific human beings living in a specific time and taking part in specific events. And on the other hand, I have to discern the eternally human in them, the tremor of eternity, that which is in human beings at all times. They say to me, well, memories are neither history nor literature. They're simply life, full of rubbish and not tidied up by the hand of an artist. The raw material of talk every day is filled with it. These bricks lie about everywhere, but bricks don't make a temple. For me, it is all different. It is precisely here, in the warm human voice, in the living reflection of the past, that the primordial joy is concealed and the insurmountable tragedy of life is laid bare. Its chaos and passion, its uniqueness and inscrutability, not yet subjected to any treatment, the originals. I build temples out of our feelings, out of our desires, our disappointments, dreams, out of that which was, but might slip away. And now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Eyad Akhtar, a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright whose amazing new novel, Homeland Elegies, has just been published. Eyad will become the new president of PEN America at the beginning of December, and we are all the luckier for it. Eyad.
Thank you, Jenny. Nice to be here. Great honor and in solidarity with the Belarusian people. I'm going to read from Secondhand Time, translated to English by Belarusian, a section called On the Future, and there's a bunch of different voices, a bunch of different speakers, so it should be self-evident. I go to protest because it's time they stop treating us like chumps. Bring back free elections, you lowlifes. The first time 100,000 people assembled on Bolotnaya Square, no one imagined that there would be that many of us. We kept putting up with it. And then at a certain point, the lies, the lawlessness went off the charts. Enough. The State Department is behind it all. Western puppet masters cooked up one perestroika according to their recipes. And do you remember how that turned out? I don't go to those demonstrations. I go to Putin rallies, rallies for a strong Russia. I won't abide by Putin and Medvedev sitting down and deciding today, you're the president, tomorrow it's me. I'm not having any of that swill. We're not just cattle, we're the people. At demonstrations, I see people I've never seen at protests before, like the students who, until recently, were wholly indifferent to all that propaganda they push on the idiot box. Ladies in mink coats, young men who showed up to protests in Mercedes. Just yesterday, all they cared about was money, clothes, and comfort. But then it turned out this wasn't enough. It's simply not enough for them. And the same goes for me. I'm a leftist. My conviction is that it's impossible to achieve anything nonviolently. I'm thirsty for blood. Without blood, we can't get anything major done. I am standing here waiting to storm the Kremlin. This isn't a game anymore. We should have taken the Kremlin a long time ago instead of going around shouting, give me the orders to pick up a crowbar and pitchfork. I'm ready. I don't go to the rallies. I'm afraid of getting hit over the head with a club. I used to stay away from politics. My job and my family were enough for me. I didn't see the point of marching through the streets. I was more attracted to the theory of small deeds. I volunteered at a hospice when there were forest fires outside of Moscow. I brought clothes and groceries to the victims. It was a different kind of experience. Meanwhile, my mother was always in front of the television. She was sick of the liars and crooks with a Chekist past. She'd tell me everything. We went to our first protest together, even though my mother is 75 years old, just in case we brought flowers. We thought they wouldn't shoot at people holding flowers. I go to the demonstrations because my husband does. I don't like crowds. A crowd doesn't decide anything. Individuals do. The government made sure that there were no flashy personalities at the top. The opposition doesn't have a Sakharov or Yeltsin. This snow revolution hasn't produced any heroes. Where's their platform? What are they going to do? They'll come out into the streets and shout, and then that same Nemtsov or Navalny will tweet about how they're on holiday in the Maldives, that they're enjoying Paris. Imagine Lenin going skiing in the Alps after a demonstration in 1917. The picture has changed completely a number of times in the past 20 years. And what have we ended up with? Putin leave is just the latest mantra. I don't want to participate in that kind of spectacle. So what if Putin leaves? Some new autocrat will take the throne in his place. People will go on stealing, same as before. We'll still have filthy entranceways, abandoned elderly, cynical bureaucrats, brazen traffic cops. Bribing officials will still be considered a matter of course. What's the point of changing governments if we don't change ourselves? I'm going to the rally. Are you? And now it's my honor to introduce Keith Gessen, founding editor of N+1, a contributor to The New Yorker and London Review of Books, and also the author of a novel, All the Sad Young Literary Men.
Thank you for having me to this event. I'm going to read from Voices from Chernobyl by Svetlana Alexievich. This is the monologue from Ludmila Ignatenko, the wife of one of the firemen who was called to the fire at the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. I don't know what I should talk about death or about love, or are they the same? Which one should I talk about? We were newlyweds. We still walked around holding hands, even if we were just going to the store. I would say to him, I love you, but I didn't know then how much. I had no idea. We lived in the dormitory of the fire station where he worked, on the second floor. There were 3 other young couples. We all shared a kitchen. On the first floor, they kept the trucks, the red fire trucks. That was his job. I always knew what was happening, where he was, how he was. One night, I heard a noise. I looked out the window. He saw me. Close the window and go back to sleep. There's a fire at the reactor. I'll be back soon. I didn't see the explosion itself, just the flames. Everything was radiant, the whole sky, a tall flame and smoke. The heat was awful. And he's still not back. The smoke was from the burning bitumen, which had covered the roof. He said later it was like walking on tar. He tried to beat down the flames. They kicked at the burning graphite with their feet. They weren't wearing their canvas gear. They just went off as they were, in their shirt sleeves. No one told them. They had been called for a fire. That was it. 4 o'clock, 5, 6. At 6, we were supposed to go to his parents' house to plant potatoes. It's 40 kilometers from Pripyat to Spirizhya, where his parents live. Sowing, plowing, he loved to do that. His mother always told me how they didn't want him to move to the city. They'd even built a new house for him. He was drafted into the army. He served in the fire brigade in Moscow, and when he came out, he wanted to be a fireman and nothing else. Sometimes it's as though I hear his voice alive. Even photographs don't have the same effect on me as that voice. But he never calls to me, not even in my dreams. I'm the one who calls to him. 7 o'clock. At 7, I was told he was in the hospital. I ran there, but the police had already encircled it, and they weren't letting anyone through, only ambulances. The policeman shouted, "The ambulances are radioactive, stay away." I wasn't the only one there. All the wives whose husbands were at the reactor that night had come. I started looking for a friend. She was a doctor at the hospital. I grabbed her white coat when she came out of an ambulance. "Get me inside," I said. "I can't, he's bad. They all are." I held on to her. "Just to see him." "All right," she said. "Come with me just for 15 or 20 minutes. I saw him. He was all swollen and puffed up. You could barely see his eyes. "He needs milk, lots of milk," my friend said. "They should drink at least 3 liters each." "But he doesn't like milk." "He'll drink it now." Many of the doctors and nurses in that hospital, especially the orderlies, would get sick themselves and die. But we did not know that then. Now it's my honor to introduce Belarushievich, the translator of Secondhand Time.
Hello. I'm also going to be reading from Secondhand Time. This is from the final chapter, which tells the story of a Belarusian university student named Tatsiana Zamirovskaya, who was 21 when she spoke to Svetlana. This was in December of 2010. Kuleshova was one of the thousands who joined protesters on the streets of Minsk, protesting the fraudulent re-election of Alexander Lukashenko back then. And during these protests, she was detained and held in jail for a month. A year after having this conversation, she and Alexievich ran into one another on the Moscow-Minsk train. Kuleshova was now living in Moscow and participating in the mass anti-Putin demonstrations there. In this section that I'm reading from, Kuleshova is actually quoting from the conversation she overheard while she was in her jail cell. So it's called Conversations in a Jail Cell, also many voices. Okay. It's always the same story. Things keep going in circles. The people are a herd of antelopes, and the government is a lioness. The lioness picks out a victim from the herd and then kills it. The rest just keep chewing their cud, watching the lioness out of the corner of their eyes as she's picking out her next victim. Once she's bagged her prey, they all sigh in relief. Oh, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I can keep chewing. I've always loved reading about the revolution at the museum. I have a romantic bent. I made believe that I was in that fairy tale. No one made me go. I went out into the streets on my own. I wanted to see for myself how people actually brought about revolution. And for that, I got clobbed in the head and in the kidneys. It was mostly young people who came out. They call it a children's revolution. That's what they're saying about it now. Our parents stayed home. They sat in their kitchens talking about how we'd gone out there and worrying. They were scared, but we have no memories of the Soviet era. We've only read about communists in books. We weren't afraid like that. 2 million people live in Minsk, and how many of us were out there? 30,000 tops. But even more people were watching us on their balconies, honking the horns of their cars, bolstering us. Come on, guys, yeah, you can do it. More people are usually sitting in front of their TVs and drinking beer. That's how the majority of people are. And as long as it's only us educated romantics who are out in the streets, it's not a real revolution. You really think that the only thing holding all this together is fear? The police and their clubs? You're wrong. The victim and the executioner have an agreement. That's something left over from communist times. There's a silent pact, a contract, the great unspoken arrangement. The people understand everything, but they keep quiet. In exchange, they want decent salaries, the ability to buy at least a used Audi, and a vacation in Turkey. Just try talking to them about democracy or human rights. It's like you're speaking ancient Greek. Those who lived through Soviet times instantly start saying things like, oh, our children thought that bananas were something that grew in Moscow, and now take a look around. There's 100 different kinds of salami. What more freedom do we need? Even today, many people want to go back to the Soviet Union, except with a ton of salami. I ended up here by accident. I went to the square with my friends just for fun. I was only curious about what it would be like to be in the middle of all those posters and balloons. To be perfectly honest, I had a crush on one of the guys I went with. In reality, I'm nothing but an indifferent spectator. I've stopped thinking about politics a long time ago. I'm so damn sick of the battle between good and evil. They drove us out to some kind of barracks. We spent the night on our feet facing the wall. In the morning, get on your knees. We got on our knees. Get up, hands up. They told us to put our hands on our heads and do 100 squats. Then it was stand on one leg. What were they doing that for? Why? Ask them. They won't be able to tell you. Someone gave them permission. It made them feel powerful. Some girls got nauseated and fainted. The first time I got called in for an interrogation, I laughed in the detective's face until he finally snapped. Listen up, little girl. I'm going to fuck you in every hole and throw you in a cell with real criminals. I've never read Solzhenitsyn, and I don't think that the detective had either, but we all knew the script anyway. If they bring back the camps, there will be plenty of people who want to be guards there, tons. I remember one of them, looking him in the eye. He seemed like a normal person, except he was foaming at the mouth. They moved like sleepwalkers, as though they were in a trance. They kept swinging left, right, left, right. One man fell down and they put a shield on top of him and started dancing on it. These beef heads, 2 meters tall, 80 or 100 kilos each. You know, they feed them well. Those riot police and special ops boys, yeah, they're real special. They're like Ivan the Terrible's oprichniks. You don't want to believe that what they're doing is of their own free will. You resist the thought with all your might. You fight with the last of your strength. They need to eat. It's just some guy. All he's seen in life was school and then the army. Now he makes more money than a professor. Afterwards, it's always the same old story, like clockwork. Afterwards, he'll say he was acting on orders. They didn't know anything. It has nothing to do with them. Even today, they find 1,000 excuses. Who's going to feed my family? I took an oath. I couldn't break ranks even if I wanted to. You can do that to anyone, or at least to a lot of people. I'm only 20 years old. How am I supposed to live now? I'm worried that when I go out and go back to the city, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to be afraid to look anywhere except at the ground. And finally, we have a video from Hana Komar.
Hi, I'm Hana Komar. I'm a poet and translator based in Minsk, Belarus. I also work at the Belarusian PEN Center, and I've been actively involved in the resistance movement in Belarus after the presidential election 2020. The poems that I'm gonna read for you are my personal, intimate experience, but at the same time, it is reflective of the experience of many other of my country people, maybe way too many. Landlocked. We practice in the city puddles, otherwise there is no chance to swim out when autumn starts, bringing along the rainfall. Water cannons prepare to wash away sandbags on the barricades of our summer. The live buoy ring is damaged, but so are the wheels of the cannons. We couldn't find you that night on auto dial tones like batons, like rubber bullets directed at you. 100, 131, long tone. A morning face in concrete, kicked from unconsciousness. 3 days without food. There is no answer to all our white flowers and red hearts. Human body and memory withstand injuries incompatible with our belief in the better. We rename the colors fear, anxiety, mourning, loving, resistance, hope. When it's over, I will help you paint these bare walls white, red, white. Women's solidarity chains. There are no flowers, no tears along the road. Only the beeping from the passing cars. I want to be my body again. Neither red, nor white or black, nor the hands holding reproach, but bare feet walking on grass. I put on a thimble and pet your hair. I do this to my fingers. Imagine my heart. A living woman, neither a battle flag nor a bud of hope. I want to hear my voice. I want my body back. I must never have wanted it so badly. Thank you, and stand with Belarus.
Thank you to all our panelists for spending your Friday night with us and for your support of Belarusian people in the most challenging times, which is getting more and more challenging every day. Special thanks to our partners, the Open Society University Network and City of Asylum Bookstore. Thank you all who joined us tonight in this virtual space of solidarity. I encourage everyone to join our writers and sign a letter of solidarity with Belarusian people on pen.org and share it with your social networks. People of Belarus need your support right now. Only together we can fight authoritative forces and protect our freedoms. So please do sign the letter. You'll find this recording on PEN America's YouTube channel later on, so please share with those who missed it. And thank you again, and have a wonderful night.